April 27th marks the 40th anniversary of the day that Bill Ward was sent to fire Ozzy Osbourne from Black Sabbath. It signaled absolute uncertainty for heavy metal's first band, who were already barreling towards rock bottom, but there was no other option. And besides, it worked out great for everyone, right? Look at almost any rock band's history. They break by the 10-year mark. Band members either hate each other, someone is too strung out to play or write, or there's just no creative juice left as a new crop of bands define new movements. Black Sabbath were no exception. Much like the drugs they were using, Sabbath's ascent was quick and euphoric, but the come down was harsh, rattling the inner workings of the band so much that they were left with no other option than to fire their iconic singer for behavior even a bunch of addicts couldn't deal with anymore. It worked for the best in the end. It gave me the shove up the arse I needed, and it probably made it a lot more fun for them, making records with a new singer. Ozzy wrote in his book, I Am Ozzy. Feeling betrayed, he still praised Dio, but wished they had called it Black Sabbath 2. Here's one of the problems Sabbath dealt with. On the Never Say Die tour, Ozzy was up for 3 days doing coke. He had his old hotel room key card and went into the wrong room. The maid was there with the door open, and the room number on the key card he was holding matched. He was let in and went to bed for 24 hours. Nobody could find him, and he missed that day's show. From Tony Iommi's end, he couldn't deal with it anymore after the band spent months trying to write new material, only for Ozzy to show disinterest. We couldn't have a good conversation with him because he took more booze and drugs and was pretty much out of it. We'd all be at times, but he was on a totally different level altogether, the Riff Lord said in his book Iron Man. Sabbath at the time were newly managed by Don Arden of Jet Records, Sharon Osbourne's father. She was working with him and pretty much saved Ozzy from drinking himself to death in a hotel room, got his solo career off the ground, and had him... Sharon recommended Ronnie James Dio, who had emerged as an incredible talent, leaving Elf to pursue Ritchie Blackmore's new band, Rainbow. They only wrote 3 of rock's best albums ever together. With Dio freshly out of Rainbow, he linked up with Iommi, ultimately reforming Sabbath despite Don's insistence that Ronnie would never work out. They then wrote 2 of metal's best albums in back-to-back years. Sabbath had retooled their sound, still reliant on Iommi's megaton riffs. Dio's lyrical finesse cemented his legend, spinning lore with wisdom and belting it from that small body in a way only he has done. The glory didn't last long for Sabbath, but it at least brought them more time, and Iommi was able to carry on through the decade and into the 90s with one quick reunion with Dio. People, including this narrator, will tell you the Tony Martin albums are no good. Those people, according to Joe, who wrote this script, are liars. Meanwhile, Ozzy was cranking out multi-platinum records, and his debaucherous habits looked like he was trying to celebrate with 1 drink per album sold. Still, he was able to get the job done and landed an ace of a guitar player in Randy Rhoads, who revolutionized heavy metal guitar playing, helping define the sound of the 80s. Just imagine an alternate world where he stayed in Quiet Riot. Don't wanna. Even after the tragic loss of Rhoads, Ozzy turned to Jake E. Lee for another 2 knockout records, and then found a 20-year-old Zakk Wylde out of New Jersey. Another 2 albums and another ridiculous guitar player on the loose. Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, Bark at the Moon, Shot in the Dark, No More Tears, none of those songs exist if Sabbath keep Ozzy in 1979. So Ozzy retires for a year, hates it, comes back, Lollapalooza doesn't want him, so Sharon creates Ozzfest. The touring festival was responsible for maintaining a thriving metal scene in the mid to late 90s when grunge threatened extinction for the last 25 years of rock and metal bands. So yeah, saving heavy metal, and all because Ozzy got fired. Slipknot, pretty much every metalcore band, Mastodon, System of a Down, Papa Roach, Disturbed, all of those bands owe something to Ozzfest for where they are today, and so do we. And how about Black Label Society? That's another domino that fell because of the chain reaction of Ozzy's firing. To be honest, Zakk probably would have been successful anyway. Dude can play. Odds are, though, we wouldn't have arrived exactly at Black Label. Jake E. Lee even had Badlands with Ray Gillen, who was in Sabbath for a bit. And hey, back to Ozzfest, remember when Ozzy and Sabbath both played each night? You'd do anything to see that again. Even the reunion of Black Sabbath altogether. If Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill all stuck together after Never Say Die, maybe they wouldn't have been playing by the mid-90s or the new millennium. They could have flamed out, but instead we got years of that reunion and even the Heaven and Hell band with Dio and Vinny Appice back in the fold. The Devil You Know was brilliant and Ronnie's last full album, and he sounded amazing at 65. The lyrics were some of his best, and more Iommi riffs, who can complain? Then there's 13, Sabbath's first album with Ozzy since being fired. It recaptures the darkness of some of the band's earliest days against a steely modern production. It caps off the band's catalog, so Forbidden isn't the last thing they did, though we all count the Heaven and Hell band as Sabbath in our hearts anyway, and it delivered on nearly 4 decades of fans holding out hope. This limited catalog for the Ozzy era kind of maintains something sacred, comparable to those first 6 Sabbath records, right? There's an immortalizing power to something like that. Are you convinced? Ozzy's firing was one of the greatest things to ever happen in heavy metal. We'll always debate the circumstances of how it all went down, but who would want to roll the dice and risk all of that never happening? Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to visit Loudwire on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at GramWire, and you can follow Joe on Instagram at IceNerveShatter. We'll see you next time.